About 2 years ago, I drove home late from a family reunion. It was a 2-hour drive, and I didn't stay over because I had work the next morning. The route had no towns, just a narrow 2-lane road with heavy brush and tall trees pressed right up to the edge. It had no streetlights, no houses, and every now and then I'd see a mailbox with no driveway. Most of the time, it was only my headlights and whatever showed up in the beams at the last second. Road signs, reflective posts, pale tree trunks. 45 minutes in, I hit a wall. 1 second I felt fine. The next, I could barely keep my eyes open. It wasn't normal fatigue. It felt like my body just shut down. I rolled the window down and let cold air slap me and blasted the radio, but nothing helped. I knew I shouldn't keep going, but there wasn't anywhere safe to stop. No gas station, no rest areas, just dark woods. I started looking for a spot where I wouldn't be right on the road. Eventually, I saw a break in the brush and pulled off. The tires bumped over soft grass, and I nosed the car behind some bushes. Not hidden, but less obvious from the road. I turned the hazards on for a second, then switched them off. I didn't want to draw attention. I locked the doors, checked the time, 11:22, and leaned the seat back. I told myself I'd only nap for 10 minutes. I woke up to a faint scratching sound. The clock said 11:50. The sound stopped after a few seconds. I was so tired that I convinced myself it was branches or maybe an animal brushing past. I didn't even look, I just went back to sleep. The next time I woke, it was the same sound. A steady dragging across the door, then along the rear panel. It would pause and start again. The clock said 12:40. That's when it hit me. This wasn't random. Something had come back after almost an hour. I tried to tell myself it was an animal, but the timing didn't make sense. I lifted my head and looked into the rearview mirror. At first, I only saw the faint outline of trees in the dark. Then I caught movement, something slipping back into the woods. I didn't see a clear shape, just a shadow moving low and quick. My stomach dropped. I started the car right away, shifted into drive and pulled out. I didn't floor it, but I picked up speed as I went. Less than 100 yards up there was a bend. As I rounded it, my headlights lit up another car pulled over on the shoulder. The driver's door was hanging open. No hazards, no dome light, no movement. It looked empty, but fresh. I slowed just enough to glance in. I didn't see anyone inside. I drove past and checked my mirror. At first, the road was empty. Then a man suddenly sprinted into the lane from beyond the bend. He was running full speed straight toward me. I cracked the window a little and heard him shouting for me to get out of the car. He wasn't asking for help. He was ordering me like he had authority. The tone was sharp, aggressive. I hit the gas and left him behind. I didn't stop again. I watched the mirrors for a long time. I only relaxed when the trees pulled back and there were actual lights. I merged onto a bigger road and only then noticed my hands shaking on the wheel. When I got home, I parked under the light in front of my building and walked around the car. On the rear door and quarter panel, there were 3 thin lines, not deep gouges, more like something rough had scraped the paint. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I checked again in daylight. The marks were there, each one about the length of my forearm. The spacing looked deliberate, not random. I kept thinking about the timing, 11:50, then 12:40. If the first sound was random, the second felt planned. For the next week, I kept replaying the drive in my head. The open door, the hidden movement near my car, the man sprinting out after I passed. It fit together too well. One person waits by the staged car. Another creeps up on me, scratches to see if I move, then slips away. When I pull back onto the road, I pass the setup. The man runs out screaming to make me stop. If I had pulled over for the open car, I would have been boxed in, maybe robbed, maybe worse. I didn't report it. What would I say? A guy told me to get out of my car? The cops would ask why I was parked on the grass in the middle of the night. They'd tell me not to sleep on rural roads, and they'd be right. I regret pulling over, but I also think about how close I came to stepping out when I saw that open door. If I had, I probably wouldn't have made it to the highway. Since then, I don't nap on the road. If I'm tired, I push to a gas station with lights and people around. I keep pepper spray in the car now, and I trust that gut feeling I had. That wasn't nerves. It was my brain warning me something was wrong. People like to think horror lives in empty places. Sometimes it's just in the setup. An open car door, a scratch on the paint. That night wasn't a ghost story. It was someone with a plan for whoever stopped. I almost played into it. I'm glad I didn't. If you ever feel yourself fading on a dark road, don't pull into the bushes. Keep driving until you find light. And if someone runs out of the dark yelling for you to get out, don't stop. Just keep driving. My wife and I were in the middle of moving between cities. We had spent the entire day loading a 16-foot trailer with everything we owned. By the time we got the last box inside, the sun was gone and the sky was fading to dark. I had borrowed a big pickup truck to pull the trailer, and with how much we had packed, the rig was incredibly heavy. The truck was sluggish when it started moving, slow to climb speed, and it took forever to stop. I knew driving at night with that much weight was going to be rough, but we didn't have another choice. We headed out across the state, and by midnight we were deep into a desolate stretch of highway. It was 2 lanes wide, flat and empty, and we hadn't seen another car in what felt like an hour. My wife had fallen asleep on the bench seat beside me, curled up with her head against the door while I kept my focus on the road. The truck rumbled steady at 60, maybe 65, and the only light came from the headlights pushing forward into the black. Then I spotted movement in the distance. 2 shapes stepped into the road, maybe 200 yards ahead. At first I thought they were deer. That's normal for the area, so I eased off the gas, tapped the brakes, and laid on the horn. Usually that's enough to send deer running. I wasn't panicking, not yet, but as the headlights reached them, I realized they weren't deer at all. They were men. 2 grown men standing directly in the road. One stood in my lane, the other stood in the opposite lane. They had positioned themselves so I couldn't go left or right. They were trying to stop us. Instantly I knew this was bad. With the weight of the trailer, there was no way I could bring the truck to a full stop in time. The rig was simply too heavy, and I was already closing in fast. They must not have understood how impossible it was for me to stop before reaching them. I slammed on the brake pedal anyway, the truck shuddering and tires screaming against the asphalt. The trailer fishtailed and tugged hard at the back, threatening to jackknife. I blasted the horn again and again, hoping to scare them into moving. But neither of them budged. They just stood there, staring me down as I came closer, still rolling at 35, maybe 40 miles an hour. At that point, I realized I had one option. I centered the truck in the middle of the 2 lanes, aiming dead between them, praying neither one decided to close that gap. I gripped the wheel and braced myself. At the very last second, the man in my lane jumped aside. He was so close I thought for sure the side mirror would catch his head. I missed him by inches. Then we were past them. It was over in seconds. From the time I realized they weren't deer to the moment I cleared them, maybe 5 to 8 seconds had passed. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I kept expecting to see headlights in the rear view, maybe a car they had hidden, but the highway was empty. No vehicles, no sign of a breakdown. Just 2 men in the middle of nowhere at midnight, trying to force us to stop. Based on how they acted, I have no doubt they were planning something. Robbery, hijacking, who knows? But it wasn't good. I didn't pull over. I kept my foot steady and forced myself not to look back again. My chest felt like it was going to burst. I was shaking and struggling to breathe, and for a moment all I could think about was how close I had come to killing one of them, or how close they had come to stopping us. It wasn't until a minute later that I noticed my wife wasn't sitting beside me anymore. When I had hit the brakes that hard, she'd been thrown off the seat and onto the floor. This was before seatbelts were required, so she had nothing holding her in place. She groggily pushed herself back up, rubbing her head, and asked me what had happened. She had missed the entire ordeal. I just shook my head and told her to go back to sleep. I didn't want to explain, not while my hands were still trembling on the wheel. The rest of the drive, I couldn't shake the image of those two men, standing perfectly still, blocking both lanes, waiting for us to reach them. There was no car, no broken down vehicle, no reason for them to be there at midnight in the middle of nowhere. They weren't stranded. They weren't looking for help. They were trying to make us stop. I kept driving until I saw the glow of another town on the horizon, and only then did I let myself breathe easier. But that night has stayed with me ever since. I don't know what their plan was, and I'm glad I never found out. All I know is if I'd managed to stop that truck, things could have ended very differently. It was late at night, sometime around 1 in the morning, and my buddy and I were parked outside a little 24-hour pizza place. We weren't driving around, just sitting in my car, waiting for the order to be ready. The lot was mostly empty except for a couple of cars on the far side. The glow from the shop's neon sign lit up the front row, but where we were parked, the light didn't quite reach. I remember we were just talking, killing time. I think I was rambling about some movie we'd watched earlier, giving a half-baked hot take trying to make him laugh. My buddy wasn't really responding. At first I figured he was just tired, zoning out while I kept going. Then I noticed he was staring at me. That might not sound strange, but this guy never looked people in the eye. He was one of those guys who would glance at you for half a second and then look away again. Eye contact made him uncomfortable. So when I saw him locked on me eyes wide, it was immediately off. I stopped mid-sentence and asked, "Dude, what's up?" He didn't say anything. He just raised his hand and pointed past me, toward my window. Right outside my window, not even a foot away, was a man. I hadn't heard him approach. He was bent forward, his face inches from the glass, lunging toward it like he'd just stopped himself at the very last second before smashing into it. His eyes were wide, his mouth slightly twisted open, like he'd been caught in the middle of something. For half a second, he didn't move. He just held that position, face almost pressed to the glass, and stared right at me. Then he straightened up and stumbled back a few steps. He turned without a word and jogged off across the lot, disappearing into the shadows near the street. I turned back to my friend, heart pounding, and asked, "What the hell was that?" He finally blinked, still pale, and explained why he'd frozen. Apparently the man had first walked by glancing in at us. Then he stopped, backed up a few steps, and suddenly started sprinting straight at the car. My buddy saw him sprinting toward us, but by the time he could react, the guy was already right there. He had been a split second away from slamming full force into the side of the car. The only thing that stopped him was me turning my head at the exact moment my friend pointed. It was like being caught ruined whatever he was about to do, and he pulled up short, stopping half an inch from my window. I sat there trying to piece it together, but the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. If he was just some drunk or someone messing with us, why sprint at a parked car in the middle of the night? And why stop so suddenly the second we both looked at him? The pizza place was only a few yards away. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting him to circle back or come at us again. Every shadow outside the glow of the neon looked like it could be him waiting. My buddy was rattled too. He didn't even want to get out of the car when our order was ready. We debated just leaving it, but hunger won. When we finally went inside, we made sure to stick close together, scanning the lot the whole time. The guy was nowhere in sight. On the drive back, the mood was completely different. Neither of us talked much. Every time headlights appeared behind us, I checked the mirror to make sure it wasn't him following. I even circled the block once before pulling up at my friend's place, just in case. To this day, I won't sit in a parked car late at night without checking my mirrors every few seconds. And every time I pass a 24-hour pizza place, I remember that empty parking lot and the man who came running out of the dark for no reason.